the scoop. The scoop. Hey, what's up? This is your girl Ashley Marie, and you're tuned into The Scoop, your one stop for all things love, lifestyle, and relationships on MorrisMediaLive.com.
I said, welcome to the school. You know it's time to tune in. You gotta tell all your friends, girl, welcome to the school. You know it's time to tune in. You better tell all your friends, homie, welcome to the school. The time is now, tune in. You better buzz in your friends, y'all, welcome to the school. Gather round, tune in. Now let the show begin. Hey, look, it's time to tune in. If you not, then you faking it. The best topics, love, lifestyle, and relationships. The dopest host in the world, Ashley Marie, holding it down from 7:30 to the 9:00 p.m. You better tell a friend every Wednesday night, cause you know she going in. They breaking the hottest artist in the game right now. No competition, so she in her own lane right now. You need the latest and the greatest, somebody that's gonna debate it. Well, we got it on lock, I know they hate it. So you can learn a lot if you choose to pay attention. We talk world news, sports, don't let me fail to mention how to get your money right, so you can live a lovely life. Call in and get you some advice. It's not a game no more, we taking over the airwaves. MorrisMediaLive.com to catch the replay. You know it's time to tune in. You gotta tell all your friends, girl, welcome to the school. You know it's time to tune in. You better tell all your friends, homie, welcome to the school. The time is now, tune in. You better buzz in your friends, y'all, welcome to the school. Gather round, tune in. Now let the show begin.
Welcome to The Scoop, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We're your one stop for all things love, lifestyle, and relationships. I am your host, Ashley Marie, and I am so excited about tonight's show. We have a very special guest here in studio, LA-based real estate agent and businesswoman, Billie Jean Ford. She's going to be discussing all things real estate and business with us tonight. She has some great information, some great tips for everyone. That includes investments, tips for first-time home buyers, and how to tap into the investment part of real estate as well. So I'm so excited to have you here, Billie Jean Ford. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, goodness. Thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you're a realtor here in LA. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background.
Oh, gosh. You know, after graduating from Pepperdine and trying to figure it all out, I stumbled upon a franchise expo here in LA.
Okay.
And from that point, I got into the restaurant hospitality industry with Quiznos.
Okay.
And gosh, after that, it was from that point, unfortunately, my mom had gotten sick. Mm-hmm. After about 8 years of being in that business and opening not just one, but 3 restaurants.
Wow.
You know, I had to take a step back.
Okay. And you took a step back but you took a step back to take a step forward, right?
Exactly.
So what exactly happened?
From that point, I was trying to figure out what my new purpose would be, to somehow combine all of those pieces of hospitality, relationship building, you know, and obviously the love to maybe build some wealth in my new future now that some calamities and some life experience had happened, and see what I can do with that. And real estate became my answer.
Okay. How did you stumble upon real estate? Were you like drawn into the glitz and the glam?
Oh gosh,
of real estate, because it is like a very it's a very sexy business. Like it's very glamorous. You have your shows on E, like $1 Million Listing. I think that's on E. And you know you have those shows, and it looks like, oh my God, they live such a glamorous lifestyle. So what drew you into real estate?
You know, what really drew me in, aside from all the sexiness, of course, would be the flexibility, the freedom, the idea that, you know what, when I was in those restaurants for years on end, it was nice to like go, you know what, after dealing with what was the age range from 16 to 25-year-olds and having them not show up for work, not clean the dishes.
Oh, that is true.
These are restaurants, you know?
That is true. And the restaurant business is like the toughest business. People fail at that in that industry a lot. And you did have teenagers working for you. Now that I think about it, like your Quiznos.
And I just graduated college myself.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second, we're not that far apart in age here.
Yeah, and I was there for 12 hours, and that's the kind of, not only patience, but, gusto or whatever they call it, the stuff that you need to basically get through those days. Because when 9/11 happened, the restaurant and malls and all the rest of it, everyone took a hit.
Right.
And you have to learn how to really take those moments and sit with them for a little bit, see how you get through it, and hopefully take a learning moment from it all. And real estate's not that much different. It really isn't, because I think everyone could agree that the market has changed.
Yeah.
And if you've been in it long enough, you've also seen the crashes, which also bring in some good and some bad and some learning moments. I think for a lot of people.
I feel like the real estate market is very, I don't want to say volatile, but it changes a lot.
Yes.
So you'll hear things like, interest rates are low or high. Maybe that's more on the lending side,
right.
But you hear those things, and you often hear that changes are constantly happening in the real estate market as far as home prices, and is it a renter's market or is it a buyer's market? So how do you stay up to date on all of that?
You know what? That's a really good way to put things in terms of how do we stay above it all, whether it's the news, whether it's reading, whether it's connecting with other realtors or people in that marketplace that say, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And just keeping up with that sort of time. I mean, you just, especially depending on what you're focusing on, which is what brings me to some of the things where, again, we're going to probably talk about a little bit later, but just educating yourself on the market. What is the plan?
Right. So how did working in the restaurant industry prepare you for real estate? How do you think it prepared you for real estate?
Oh, gosh. The day at Quiznos when someone would say, I didn't want my, sub not toasted, or I don't want tomatoes. You deal with a lot of the small details. And in real estate, especially depending if you're on the residential side, everyone has a small detail that might make or break the moment for them, whether it's the kitchen, whether it's not having a pool or a backyard, or the color of a wall. Right. So all the details that involve in the process have to be watched carefully by someone who really loves what they do.
Yeah.
Because that person will hopefully just as much fall in love with the property as much as
the client.
Exactly.
That's good. You do have to be passionate about it. Do you have a passion for homes? And
I do. Yeah. I have as much love for it as I do food, really.
Oh,
I love the food business as much.
So you've worked in both of your passion industries, I guess you can say.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Do you ever get like really difficult clients that you're like, ugh, I don't know why, or I would rather not work with this person?
I think I've had maybe 2 situations like that in my career so far. And, we just kind of part ways, agree to disagree, just like any relationship. You just kind of say, you know what, we're just not each other's cup of tea. And you kind of learn that through the process.
Yeah.
And they always say for us realtors, the day that the person's in your car, is the time you really get to bond and see what they really like and find out, again, what are those details that they're looking for that as a realtor you're hoping to guide them to what their dream home is or what's on their wish list or as close to their wish list.
As possible.
As possible.
Yeah. Do you ever get people that are just very difficult to deal with? Like you can't find, like no property's perfect.
Oh, goodness. You know what? I always let them know that money can probably fix whatever they really want, whether it's a color of the house or whether it's a bigger kitchen.
Right.
And obviously, if there's some restriction on an HOA, that's another story. But for the most part, if they're willing to go to that next level of money or if they're willing to go that next level
then we can make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Whatever you want to do.
Love that. Okay. So we're going to chat about investments, how specifically millennials, especially now, can invest in property. And is it best to purchase an investment property first or your primary residence? we want to get some details and some tips from you regarding that as well. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break, and we'll come right back with more information from you about real estate and investing in the market. All right. So we'll take a quick break. This is, let's see, we have Drake with Underground Kings. Do you have it up, Felicia? Okay. Thank you. Welcome back to the city, you guys. That was Drake with Underground Kings. We are here hanging out tonight with realtor and businesswoman Billie Jean. Thank you for joining us. So if you guys have questions for Billie Jean, or if you have real estate related questions or business related questions, feel free to give us a call at 323-293-3375. And Lady Billie Jean would be more than happy to address them, I'm
Absolutely.
sure. All right. So there's some real estate terminology that I don't quite understand that I was hoping you could clear up for me. What does equity mean?
Equity to most people and in our world, defined, would be that moment where there is enough money after loans are paid, or insurances, or any sort of questions that like this are a lot to deal with a lot of lenders. So depending on how they define it, because when I look at equity, like I look at someone's property and I say, okay, you've got about $50,000 equity simply because you owe this much and you bought it for this much.
Okay.
So therefore, there's a certain amount of money that you can use.
That's the profit.
Correct.
That they currently have in their property.
Right.
Understood. Okay. Now, if they want to use that money, I know this is lender territory.
Right.
But if they want to, since you're here, I'll ask you.
Sure.
If they want to use that money, is that a loan, or is that their money that they can use?
Well, what happens again is that they go into like an appraisal. It depends if they're getting it from a bank. So they will it'll have to fall into a certain criteria for them to figure out, okay, is this going to be taken out as a credit line, or is this going to be taken out as an extension of their current loan situation?
Okay, so you could either have like a home equity line of credit.
Correct.
Or it would be like a refi, maybe a refi.
Right. A refi that would allow the person to use that money to whatever use they want to use it for.
Okay. I get that.
Yeah.
All right. So how much should someone put down for a home, a down payment for their home, for their primary residence? Let's say that.
For their primary residence here in Southern California.
I know.
Let's just make that clear.
Yeah, we have to specify because it's very expensive here.
Let's make that clear. To stay competitive with the offers, because our inventory is so low, 20% is what's recommended.
Okay.
In some areas, lenders can concur with this. There is other programs out there that will allow for a person to get some sort of maybe a lower down payment situation where maybe it's only 10% and still stay competitive for that market. But really, there's so much international money coming out. And with what I understand, again, lenders out there, please, I'm stepping in a little bit into your world here, but they're saying that a lot of international money is coming. And to a lot of international clients that I do have, they look at 4.5% on every dollar that's borrowed here in the U.S. as super inexpensive. So they end up using cash, which unfortunately hits out some of the clients or buyers that are out there looking, especially for those quote-unquote great deals.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
So just curious, what would be, like, for the international buyers, what's a standard interest rate for them that you know of?
For them, it's most of the time is that they're buying it all cash. They don't even need an interest rate.
Right, but in their countries.
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure.
Okay, but it must be a lot higher than 4.5%.
Right, here in the U.S., yeah, definitely.
All righty. So what are some costs outside of outside of your home loan that first-time home buyers should be aware of?
Is inspection reports.
Okay.
The inspection reports, depending on the size of the house, depending on the conditions of the house, you're looking at the idea of getting a chimney, a sewer, I mean, out here in California, or especially in Los Angeles, we have a lot of homes that are, built in the 1940s, for example. There's a lot of deep-rooted trees surrounding certain properties, depending on the area, that could be a problem.
For the plumbing system?
Oh, absolutely. That sewer system, which, on the outside looks all great, all of a sudden the roots are a little further than they expected, and it could be a $25,000 problem within 3 months that a person who just bought the house may not
be aware of.
May have not been aware of.
So in the buying process, excuse me, you need an inspection.
Correct.
So how, if the inspection comes back with some issues, who's responsible to fix those issues? The current homeowner, or like how is that negotiated?
Oh gosh, that's the moment of truth, actually. That for all of us, because sometimes the buyers have fallen in love and they don't care. And then for the seller, they may be in a position where they're like, I don't want to give you any money. This is as is. It just depends on the situation of that buyer and the situation and emotional situations, I should add, of that seller or buyer.
So it can get heated.
Oh, completely heated to higher levels than sometimes as a realtor you expect, considering it could be a small problem like an air conditioning or just maybe the sink isn't in the right spot that the other person wants it in.
So how do you mediate that, you being the realtor?
Oh, gosh.
Are you working directly with the seller or just with their realtor as well? It just depends.
It just really depends. Most of the time, I should be dealing directly with that person's agent. And if they've done their job for as long as they have, they know how to kind of find the common ground, if you will. So we can meet halfway. So we can get this done and hopefully make everybody walk away happy, and great memories will be created. And the next person will, on my side, let's say as the listing agent, hopefully my seller will feel, hey, I made the right decision, so that way everyone is just altogether happy.
Okay. And how do you know if you're ready for home ownership? What are some, like when you're accepting a new client, how do you know if that person is ready for the next step to actually purchase property?
Well, home buyers can be everybody from, for their first time especially. Sometimes it can be they just got married. Or maybe a person has just finally, that this is what they want. This is how they want to invest their money. And finding out, from some people, they have to do it for tax reasons.
Okay.
It depends what motivates them. So what I'm looking for when I have to deal with that first home buyer, basically, I'm looking for words that tell me that they're ready. And sometimes it's also their parents. They're like, you need to do this now.
Right.
And they're like, I don't know what I'm doing, Billie. Just help guide me through this process. And hopefully I'll find the right spot for them.
Okay.
That doesn't stretch their budget, because that's the one thing I don't want for, especially my friends.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be in a situation where the house is suffocating them, where they call that
house poor, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, you said it. I've seen it. And so that's one thing I try to help my friends avoid.
Okay. And what words do you look for? You said you look for words. What words?
Gosh, I just see it. When you've been in this business long enough, you're looking for that excitement.
Yeah.
You're looking for that sort of stability in their search, if you will. Because we'll go through homes and we'll talk about it. I'll go, what did you like besides this one? Because out here in Los Angeles, every house is different.
Yeah.
They're not tract homes.
Exactly.
Where there's like 4 different phases of one house.
Exactly.
So every single one is slightly different. And we only go through that process together. And so you'll feel the excitement where, you know what, this is your house. It's calling you.
Right.
And you feel it.
And what's your thought process on foreclosed properties? Like what
foreclosures?
Are those?
Well, there's not as many.
I was going to say, they're pretty hard to find, right?
There's not as many. A lot of clients that are in the investment side of things, they're always looking for it. And the greatest part about my industry is that, when you network enough, you find out what those properties are or where they are, the hidden gems, if you will, before they get onto the market.
How can someone that is in the market now looking for a home find foreclosed properties? What's the best way?
Well, A lot of ways, I think the millennials especially, they have Google at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So finding a foreclosed home is probably pretty easy for them. There's lists that are out there. The list, though, you do have to pay for. Going through an agent that knows the area or knows those sort of inside information tips is a good way to do it, and obviously asking around. But especially for the first-time investor or first-time home buyer, foreclosures can be extremely tricky, and they have to have the patience because the lender may not even care for that person to buy that property. If there's something horribly wrong or in the condition of the home, the lender might say, we can't lend you money on this house. We're not going to get our money back.
Right.
So they get very, cautious about lending money. The first-time home buyer or maybe the investor might be cautious because there's hidden things in the walls that may not, because foreclosure you're buying as is. There's no negotiation.
Right.
You're dealing with a bank.
Right, and that's it. And the bank's not willing to. So if you do have an inspection done on a foreclosure or on a home that's not under foreclosure, and the inspection does come back with some issues, is ever the bank or the seller willing to knock down the price? Is that something you can ask for?
Oh, always. We're always negotiating. Once you're in escrow, we're always negotiating.
Okay.
Because if there's a safety problem, and that's most of the time where the leverage comes into play for a buyer, if they find out that, the water heater isn't strapped or maybe wasn't done with a permit here in Los Angeles, they're going to ask, hey, this is a safety issue. And that's where that moment comes where they're like, hey, this is going to cost us, X amount. Okay. Can we knock it off the price or can we put this in as a credit somewhere?
Okay. And how often would you say that they're willing to do that?
Sellers? Well, right now we're in a seller's market.
So not as often.
Not as often.
They have the leverage right now.
Yes, and they know it. They really do know it. And we're probably going to be that way through the rest of the year, especially here in LA.
In SoCal.
Yeah, in SoCal.
So what's your, prediction on 2019? Will it be a buyer's market? Will it flip to a buyer's market?
Well, with the interest rates kind of staying steady so far, they're still expecting the sellers to be in that leveraged position all the way into the beginning of 2019.
Okay, so it'll be like this for a while.
That's the point. That's what's the greatest thing about our markets, right? Is that it does go up and down, but and there's always that cycle.
Yeah, but it's projected to stay the same for a while. What are some of the biggest issues that you see during the closing process? Or first, before we do that, can you walk me through the closing process? So I found a home. I like that house that's on the screen right now. And we're purchasing it.
Oh, that's a beautiful home.
I say, Billie Jean, I want this house. What's the process? The
process would be, first, we obviously put an offer. It gets accepted. Everyone's happy with the price. We start getting the down payment into place. Your lender has now been contacted. The other person on their side is getting all the paperwork that is kind of like the birth certificate of the house. This is what we've done with the house. This is what we haven't done with the house. And it's kind of a questionnaire, if you will.
What is that called?
The seller's questionnaire.
Oh, really?
Literally.
Okay.
And it'll say, hey, has there been a flood? Has there been water damage?
They want to know the history of the home.
Exactly. And all this kind of paperwork gets provided to the new home buyer during the escrow process.
So it's kind of like a Carfax report if you were purchasing a used car.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
But way more in detail, and everyone's held to a different standard, if you will, because this is your home.
How do you verify the facts?
We verify it by basically, the buyer will have to verify it through their inspection. And the seller, we're assuming, is being extremely honest about how they've lived in the house and not hiding. Everyone is believing that this is true and forthright and honest. Okay. So that's what you have to believe in.
So it's just it's on a good faith basis.
Very much a good faith basis.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so then that's when the buyer has to kind of get their inspectors just to see if all of this is on good faith. And at that point, you've got the lender who's now in process. So we're all working in tandem to make sure that the buyer's protected, the seller's protected, and that once we get to that moment where your last part of your down payment is deposited into escrow, and everyone's like, woohoo, we're almost there out of the 30-day process, let's say. That's the moment where everyone hopefully is in that place where they're just excited for it to close, where they hand over the keys and it becomes like kind of a ceremony, if you will. And they say, hey, great doing business with you. And now go get your new couch, go grab that dog, whatever it is.
And it is done.
Get your paint cans, whatever it is, come on in. So,
what are some of the issues that you typically see in the closing process?
Issues is good or bad. Good would be nothing happens.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the best part. That is really the best part. As an agent, we're just saying, hopefully nothing happens. We just sail right to closing, and that's it. What the worst could happen is the funds don't show up. Now the seller who's made plans and has moved on either to their next house or their next state or their next job is put in a position.
Where they still have to keep making payments on the home that they were planning on selling because whatever didn't come through. Okay.
And so that's...
So what about on the buyer's side? What can a buyer do to make sure that the process goes smoothly?
On their side, for the most part, they'll satisfy all of the reports. They'll satisfy themselves on still how they feel because there's what they call the contingency period.
Okay. What does that mean?
Depending on what it was negotiated, that contingency period is a frame of time that says you have up, let's say, 15 days out of 30 days to pull the plug without any penalty. And that's a big deal, actually. It's a big moment for the buyer to sign off and let the seller know before that second half, if you will, towards closing, says, hey, you know what? I'm still in love with the house. I'm willing to sign off on this. We're done. And now all we have to do is let the lender do their job so that they can go ahead and sail into that closing time.
Okay.
So.
Alrighty. And then back to foreclosures really quick.
Sure.
If you are purchasing a foreclosure, what are some things you should be cautious of?
You know what? With foreclosures, cautious of, to me, means I've walked into a property and I already see there's a lot of heavy water damage. So every foreclosure isn't the same. There's plenty of homes out there that aren't neglected. They just ran into a bad situation. So, you know, to me, foreclosures can be one thing or another. And again, that'll reflect hopefully in the price that the bank wants. So the person takes that risk. And for new buyers, it just depends on if they can have that experience and they're okay with choosing that experience.
Understood. Okay. So you have to know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine you want to, like with the foreclosure, like you said, you want to look out for water damage or even cosmetic damage that could possibly be deeper issues under the surface that we don't know about. So yeah, that's really good information. Now, we often hear about real estate being a great investment opportunity. What are some different ways that you can make money in the real estate market?
Different ways in the real estate market. For a lot of my friends, when I have this kind of conversation, the same, I always wonder and ask them, like, where's your mindset at? What's your mindset? Is your mindset coming in from as an investor point of view?
Yeah.
Is your mindset coming in as a landlord point of view? Or maybe just on a consulting or maybe this is just something you want to try to learn. Because it is an expensive lesson if you don't navigate it well.
Right.
And so depending on where that person has come from, I always seem to ask that question. What's your mindset on this? Because it could easily become more complicated. And if you want to do as I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad brings it up. He's like, you want to buy 4 houses and 1 hotel. That's how they play the game of Monopoly. And if new people coming into this market have played that game enough times, they know it's not easy to get to the hotel side after buying houses, the green houses in whatever street that they chose.
Right.
So coming back to what you were saying, it's really got to be something that they want to do and they're comfortable with doing. And hopefully they have some good advice around them, that makes them feel like this is the right thing for them, whether it's a tax reason whether it's to grow and build their wealth, as we were talking about, as an investor mindset, or as a consulting side where it's like, okay, I want to kind of do this. I'm just looking around. Maybe I'll do it with partners. Maybe I'll do it in a group of investors. You know, there's different ways of doing it.
Okay, so let's break down the different ways. So let's start with landlord.
Okay.
If you're in a landlord mindset, what benefits and what responsibilities should you be expecting?
On the landlord side, you would definitely be expecting to have to basically deal with a lot of repairs potentially.
Yeah.
If you've bought a duplex, there's going to be times where a tenant may mess things up after a great Saturday night in Los Angeles. You know, something breaks and all of a sudden it's the landlord's responsibility. And are you comfortable with that sort of, in a sense, as in my world, they call it a debt service. You know, there's different things you have to be aware of in maintaining a duplex or a fourplex or however many units as a landlord you become, depending on where you buy.
Okay. And then what benefits can they expect?
As a landlord, they'll definitely be able to expect, hey, I'm at home, I'm collecting rent checks. This is good money for me, whether it's $25, you know, more than they expected in their pockets, or $100 or $1,000, depending on the rent market of the area that they purchase in. And for that landlord, that's a way of them having to multiply their income. And they can go by what the market demands. The rent doesn't have to only be $1,700. Maybe next year it's $2,500, depending again where they bought. Is it rent controlled? Is it not a rent controlled area?
Is LA County or LA County? Do we have rent control here? Or
Yeah, we do.
We do. Okay.
Santa Monica is definitely heavy on the rent control.
Rent control. Okay.
It's parts of Culver City, parts of West Hollywood.
So that could be something that someone with a landlord mindset should be mindful of.
Of course, yeah, because it may not be to their benefit. They can only increase it 1.5% a year.
So how does rent control work? Is it just based on the amount of, like, how do they determine it? Do you know?
It's, you know, that's a question for normally each city. They govern it a little differently.
A little different, okay.
But the main part to take home with that is that the owner of the property, the landlord, going back to that, is going to have to deal with only making an adjustment that is regulated by that city.
Okay.
And for example, Santa Monica, it's 1.25, I believe.
Okay.
So that's all they can do. And that's it. They can't do what somebody in a different area could go, you know what, we're going to increase your rent by $200.
Okay.
And
so that percentage is based on whatever the rent is currently at.
Correct.
They can only increase it based on that margin.
Correct.
Understood. Okay.
So they controlled, right?
Yeah.
They're all controlled.
All controlled. Okay. And then what about the investor mindset? What kind of responsibilities and benefits come from investing?
The investor mindset, a lot of those people, they don't care.
Yeah.
They really don't care what the house looks like. They're looking at what's the income potential. And that's pretty much it. They're looking at the numbers, the margins, what level of improvement that they can do to it to get more money out of it. They, you know, most of the time they don't live there or have really any connection with it. They're just looking to collect or add to their portfolio as many buildings or, you know, development deals as they can to enhance their income or the group's income.
But if you are of the investor mindset, you are kind of tied into the building or the property because you have to manage it, right?
Oh, you get a property manager for that.
So you just hire on a property manager and then
Right.
you're disconnected from it totally.
Correct.
But you're collecting the funds and then obviously paying the expenses that come along with it.
Well, you're hoping that the tenant profile of the building that you bought is paying for all of that, is servicing your mortgage debt or whatever debt that you have on that property.
Right. And then you still get a profit.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the consultant mindset. Explain that a little bit more because I'm not quite understanding that part.
So what I've learned in my years of doing this business is there's plenty of people that kind of consult within the real estate side and they dabble in it. They either buy for themselves or they consult and just kind of make the money on the side, on the business development side or the consulting side of real estate for acquisitions, for whether it's a residential person or a commercial person. So that's kind of the mindset there. Again, there's a disconnect with the emotion for that person.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Okay. Are these people with real estate licenses? Are these agents that are the consultants?
Sometimes. It's not always, because there's a lot of developers that just work with agents. They don't want to have anything to do with it, but they have plenty of educated understanding of how to get into the business or have private contracts that they prefer to do on their own, if you will.
All right. So you also mentioned this was just in your write-up that you have good debt versus bad debt. A lot of people aren't familiar with that, right?
They aren't.
So what is the difference between good debt versus bad debt? Because we're kind of taught that all debt is bad, right?
Yeah, and that's the crazy part, right? We're all taught that. I mean, we're all given a certain level of what our parents have taught us, and basically from being a businesswoman, owning restaurants, that some years they were really lean. I mean, there was times where I was struggling with dealing with the payroll, dealing with keeping everything to the standard that the franchise expects from me.
Right. Because
there was just some economic things that were happening. But going to that idea of how to manage it all. Gosh, good debt versus bad debt. It's good debt would be the debt that basically puts money and keeps the money in your pocket. The bad debt is money that doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
It'd be like
it's just taking money from you.
Yeah, it's just taking money from me. It's not doing anything for me. And that bad debt doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't give you enjoyment. There's plenty of people that love to throw money out on cars or whatever it is, but it doesn't necessarily give it all back to you.
Right.
It's not really working for you unless you're using that car for Uber or Lyft or something like that. Then that same car is now making you some money. So that's how I kind of see good debt and bad debt, and not to be afraid of debt. I think a lot of us have always been told debt is a bad thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We're kind of conditioned that it is a bad thing. But if you can make money off of it, where's the harm?
There's plenty of times where, again, back to the restaurant business for a moment, is that when we had to buy food, I would use my credit card because we were not doing as well maybe that week. If I didn't have that credit card, which most people would say that's bad debt, but I was making that debt work for me.
Right.
By buying the food to stock
keep the money.
To keep it, cash flow, basically.
Exactly.
And that's important to understand as well, is cash flow. Assets, liabilities, cash flow. Those are 4 words that a lot of us aren't taught specifically in school. And, if we can always understand it or try to or aim for it, I think that the investor mindset, the consultant mindset, or being a landlord mindset will make the world that much easier for that person, and they won't be worried or have that anxiety, because I think that comes along with first-time either home buyers or first-time investors, or first-time in the real estate market in general.
Right. And so the major difference between the landlord mindset and the investor mindset, the landlord's a little bit more hands-on, or a lot more hands-on.
Oh, they have to be.
The investor is hands-off, but the process is still the same. You're still purchasing property, renting it out to collect rent for profit, hopefully.
Well, yeah. And that's, and this is the thing. I know from time to time people, can either look at me as a controlling person.
Okay.
Some people, you know what I mean? So that's why sometimes a landlord mindset might be where I stand a lot of times, where I just want to help control things because I want to make sure I understand what happened.
Right.
Or what went wrong, or be prepared for those moments where the water heater blows up, because I know that the life of that water heater is 20 years old or something like that. Versus, the investor mindset, which I also sit on to sometimes, is where I'm like, I don't care. I have no attachment. I just want to know that I'm getting my checks every month and everyone's paying on time, and
so what is the cost of hiring on a property management company?
The cost of it, depending on
Are you familiar? I'm sure it varies.
Yeah, there's mostly a percentage. I mean, and depending on which management company you use. But again, going back to the landlord mindset, a lot of the times that person might live in the building.
Yeah.
So that way it saves a cost. Yeah. That way they're available right then and there, right?
They can be extremely hands-on.
Right.
Yeah. But really quick, just back to the property management piece. I am interested in that. What do they base the percentage off of? Is it off of the rent that you're collecting for the unit, or how do they price that?
From my understanding, because I don't really use them.
Okay.
I don't really use them. I allow the owners to pick and choose as a preference. Okay. One is because of liability issues.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be I'm not a property manager in my job. So it's like, I want to make sure that they feel that they've gotten whoever they wanted. And
and you don't want someone to come back and say, you told me.
Yeah. That's the last thing I want. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of property management, it normally is a percentage from what I understand. And, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on the property management side.
Right. Well, we won't go too far into it. But we're going to take a quick break. That was all really good information. We're going to come back with more from realtor and businesswoman Billie Jean. Our break song this time around is Cardi B with Be Careful. Are you
that's a good one. I'm a big Cardi B fan.
She's fun. Welcome back to The Scoop, you guys. That was Cardi B with Be Careful. We are hanging out here in studio with realtor and businesswoman, Miss Billie Jean Ford. Yes. I love that name. It's very entertainment-ish.
Gosh, I know. Michael Jackson-ish sometimes,
it
too,
is
right?
really, I'm sure you get that a lot, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, especially when I was dating. People would do moonwalk dances for me.
Really?
It was great. It was fantastic.
Just because your name is Billie Jean.
Yeah, and in Georgia, where I'm from, that's a very common name. So
is it?
Yeah, okay. Billie Jean.
Billie Jean is that's your entire first name?
Yes.
Okay, so Jean is not your middle name?
No.
Understood. Okay. Alrighty, so during the break, we were chatting about the process of home buying a little bit more, and we brought up a lot of people think that they just go to the realtor first. Oh, I want to buy a house. I'm going to contact Billie Jean. But ideally, they should be contacting their mortgage
their
broker, lender.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to figure out how much money they can actually borrow for a home if they're going that route, if they're going the lender route.
Absolutely. Yeah. It gives them an idea so they know how much they can spend. It's so important because there's so many times where I find out where that person falls in love with this house or this condo, and then they realize they can only go so far in the competition with our current market in terms of there not being a lot of inventory. I'm like, are you prepared to go up $100,000? And then they realize they can't. But again, there's always that moment where maybe if they have some parents or a relative that's willing to gift them part of the money to help in the process with the lender, that gift letter could mean everything to that one person or couple or family that's looking to obviously get into the market.
Speaking of the inventory right now in the market, what's the minimal price that you're seeing?
Oh gosh,
yeah,
yeah. There's I can speak for most of Los Angeles in terms of that medium price is basically around 800,000.
Yeah.
Is 800,000. And again, this flexes between condition, what street it's on, how close it is to the 10 freeway, for example. That can shift really quickly in the Los Angeles market. And that's just for mainly condos.
Okay.
Just so you know, mainly condo market. In the housing, if you're looking for a residential with a backyard, you're looking a little bit higher than that.
So you're looking in the $1 million range.
I think for most that want a backyard, yes, you're pretty close to that.
Jeez.
You're pretty close to that over in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's tough. You got to have that dual income nowadays.
A
lot of my friends are finding themselves in that moment, where they're like, I need a dual income in order to get that house over there. They just do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alrighty. So now building wealth in real estate, you have some top 5 ways to do that.
I do. I do have those top 5 ways.
Let's chat about the top 5 ways. The first one is to set goals with a mentor, right?
Yes. I wholeheartedly believe in mentors. I think that their education and their experience and their knowledge, especially certain markets, is far above mine. I came in, as an entrepreneur. I came in with some years of hospitality business.
Right.
But I didn't come in with living in Malibu or Beverly Hills and living there for years on end, where I could jog past a house and go, hey, that house is worth $2 million, or they remodeled it or whatever. It's certainly a good thing to have people you trust that can steer you in the right direction when things are going maybe not your way.
Okay.
Or when they're going your way, they can maybe enhance it for you with some of their knowledge of the market. And you can have some fun with it too. Okay. Because they're typically, at least my mentors, they're some of the greatest and funniest people I know. Okay. And love their job, obviously.
Yeah. So also you said pay attention to the deal that you want and get involved.
Yes, paying attention to your deal and trying to understand, what are you trying to get into? Are you trying to get into a rental and flip or fix and flip market? Are you trying to what are you trying to accomplish? What kind of deal are you trying to create for yourself? And pay attention to those details. It goes kind of back to what I think we talked about earlier in the education of what's bad debt, what's good debt.
Right.
And I think when you try to understand whatever the deal is the best you can, it makes it easier for you to get over some of the hurdles and obstacles of that deal.
Right.
And not go in too blindly.
Okay. And you also mentioned specializing in the area that specializing in an area that makes you want to get up every day, that inspires you, that gives you that drive, right?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're in the real estate side of the business that let's say, for example, is creating too much headache for you, you're feeling it's too complex, that space may not be right for you. Maybe you want to just only do, let's say, the landlord mindset, because maybe that's easier. You like to be more hands-on. And so if commercial is more important to you, or if residential, which is a lot more emotions, is more important, that niche or that sort of specialized area for you is where you should focus towards.
Your energy towards that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And your financial plan, right? Where will you get the money? So I did want to ask you about that. What are some options as far as funding that people, and I know this goes into the lender territory.
The lender world again.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard not to ask you those questions.
No, of course.
But what are some options that people may have for funding?
Well, in the millennial world, it would probably be, first off, maybe their family members. Okay. Family members, and hopefully if they've gotten to a point in their life where their credit is decent, they'll be able to get a good interest rate. So, I mean, first off, it's going to be the bank. The bank, or maybe their parents, one of the two. Another way of doing it, if maybe you've already been in this business a little bit longer, or maybe you have a different type of mindset, like an investor mindset, you're going to go out and look for money. You can go out and look for money. Private lenders are out there that are willing to take. Now, the interest rate might be higher, but they're out there.
Now, when you say private lenders, what do you mean by that?
There's plenty of people with money on hand that's willing to give it to you at a cost.
Understood. Okay.
And again, you can find that through people like me. I mean, there's just private friends that say, "Hey, I got $400,000 recently. I'd like to lend this off to you at a little bit of a higher interest rate because I want it back in a year, or I want it back in 5 years, or we'll renegotiate the terms in 2 years." I have a couple investors like that in Long Beach, actually. Okay. They're Japanese investors. They've got a group of people that like to lend money out to investors here in the U.S.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when they see the right deal that fits their criteria, they give you the money. It's pretty much a signature.
Oh, wow.
It's not too much involvement with, your background, your history, what grade you got in college, what GPA you had. Okay. None of that. Okay. None of that matters when you're talking money to money with somebody that is willing to give it to you if they see that whatever your project falls in line with their project.
What are some cases that you see those private lenders stepping up to want to take advantage of, or what situations are private lenders typically willing to invest in?
They will look at, because they don't want to be on the development side, right? They don't want to be part of your deal. They just want to know that you're going to give them back some money.
That money, yeah.
They basically are collaborating with you to say, hey, look, you need an extra $2 million. This falls in line with what we're trying to do. We see the area. We know who you are. We'll go with you.
Understood.
But we're going to charge you for it.
Yeah.
Charge you for it, and we want it back within a certain amount of time. Okay. So there's that way too. But that takes a little bit more complexity and a little bit more.
So let me ask you this. With first-time home buying programs or down payment assistance programs, does that make you less marketable to people that you're trying to buy from? Like to sellers? Does it make a buyer less appealing to a seller if they're utilizing those lending programs?
Like FHA or VA sort of? It can.
Okay.
It can.
How so?
Only because, again, going back into the lender world, they can probably speak a little bit more on it, is there's regulations that FHA wants that specific property to have.
Okay.
And so it might be a limitation depending on the property, depending on the condition of the property. Okay. And that just might make a seller go, you know what, this person has 50% down.
Right. I'm going to just go here because
let me go with this guy.
Yeah, because
or this girl.
And that makes sense because it's like the path of least resistance. You're going to
absolutely. And again, it goes, that seller might already have plans like we were talking about earlier. Maybe they already have a house they're trying to get into, or their family is already trying to get into that school year. They are ready to go, and anything that a buyer presents, there could be 5 offers on the table. You put them side by side. You're just trying to see what makes the most sense for your path. For your path, yeah. That makes sense. And what are some other alternatives that people may have? Maybe your budget isn't the $800,000 median. What are some other options that people have? I know you mentioned maybe asking a relative to gift you money, but are there any other options, like different areas to look into that you're familiar with that have lower cost housing? Affordable housing, that sort of market is also, again, another, it's sort of regulated depending on the city. So again, there's going to be some limitations. Some people might actually make too much money to be in some of those places. Right. You're like in a weird in-between space. Like you are not quite... Yeah, it's not quite balanced here in LA. I mean, we have a certain minimum wage, right? And then we have a certain cost of rent and a certain living that needs to be managed, right, from a day-to-day basis for most people. Right. Okay. And then what can people expect as far as property taxes? Are you familiar with that at all? I'm sure the tax person's supposed to be. I know. But are you able to touch that at all? Well, taxes, at least on my side of the world, it's just changed recently. But most of us who are buying under $1 million aren't super affected. Okay. By that. So the deductions via the taxes on a property have now been capped. Okay. They're not the same, but again, it's depending on where you are, but most of the average here in LA are looking at not passing those thresholds. Okay. So hopefully, and like I said, a tax person probably could even guide them even better. But in terms of like mortgage, interest being deducted, there's caps now, and depending on how much your interest is or how much deductions or how you've structured yourself as either a business or just as a married couple, it could be different, and all that is available to the home buyer. Yeah. But you tell your clients to reach out to a tax professional. Absolutely, because it's a sensitive subject, finances. For a lot of people, I mean, even just talking about debt isn't always comfortable, right? Or if you just started dating, so it's not always comfortable. No one ever really... How much debt do you have? Yeah, how much debt do you have? Now we can start dating, right? I mean, it's really a tough place to talk. Yeah. But so I don't want them to feel uncomfortable with me either. So I always say, hey, talk to your lender. Your lender really has that information. They'll walk you through it. So there's somewhat of a boundary right? Unless that person's comfortable, then I don't mind talking or trying to guide that person.
But you don't cross it.
I try not to. I want to talk about the happy things, right? I want to talk about the backyard. I want to talk about
the pretty, fun things.
Let me paint you a great visual of your new home. Yeah. Those are the parts I prefer to stay on to.
Yeah. So really quick, just back to like flipping of the homes. I know you had mentioned that a lot of people don't know the work that it takes to get into that. You mentioned 12-hour days that you may have to work. But there are rewards that come along with it. So tell us just a little bit about what you know as far as like the home flipping process and how much work comes with that.
Well, you have to trust your contractor. I have a friend, he had bought a home and he thought, oh yeah, I can get this done in 3 months, and it's been 2 years because that contractor, it can take that long because there's adjustments, right? Things change. Or all of a sudden you break into a wall that you thought had no electricity behind it. And
boom, there's some wires.
Or it's a load-bearing wall. And again, it goes back to the quality of that contractor and hopefully what kind of plan they designed for you. Maybe an architect hopefully was involved too. But there's plenty of times where someone who's either a first-time home investor may want to cut a corner here and there.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't need an architect. The contractor says he knows what he's doing. Let's just go with that guy. And then by the time you know it, the process that you thought made 3 months or 6 months, let's say, becomes a 2-year process.
Right. That kind of reminds me of, this is just so random. Do you watch Housewives of Atlanta or any of the Housewives?
All of them.
Okay.
I'm a big fan.
So you saying that reminded me of Chateau Charest.
Oh, my goodness.
That's been going on for like 5 years.
Oh, yeah. Look at Hertz Castle. That took years, too. So, and that's what happens. I mean, all of a sudden, you want a cat door where maybe it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But you got to tell your guy to put it in there, and then
you got to think about, like...
how'd that go?
Codes, city codes,
permitting.
Permits,
and then that takes time. I mean, there's investors and contractors and developers that I've worked with in the past where we thought the driveway going up into Hollywood Hills area was okay. Driveway's okay. It's on a private area. All of a sudden, the neighbor gets upset.
And that causes an issue.
Causes a delay, not just an issue. It causes a delay, and it causes a bunch. And, the streets of Hollywood Hills is very narrow and windy. So even just to get those dump trucks up, to get them down, just to take out that concrete, all of a sudden goes to a halt. That means all the rest of the neighbors are affected too. So everything just kind of becomes problematic, right? Yeah. Sometimes.
And you mentioned, you also mentioned these are some good tips and tidbits of information just about business in general. Consistency in your emotions, choices, and habits. Explain that. Oh,
gosh. Consistency in emotions and habits and choices. It's the reason why I bring this up is because, as we're just talking about, just even trying to do a flipping house project.
Right.
If you can't try to stay within the consistency of your choices, all of a sudden you're like, okay, this room that I think it should be red is now going to be purple. Or whatever it is. It's like, or maybe the wall shouldn't be there. It's going to cost you time and money and energy.
Just to make that change.
Because now you got to, slowly move over into a whole nother situation with your contractor and everybody else that was on the train moving forward, and you're making a right-hand turn. And again, another right-hand turn. And all of a sudden that road to happiness it's further down than you expected because you've now gone in a complete circle by doing that. And so what I mean by trying to keep that consistency or at least try to stay calm, because a lot of people I think make those choices by being compulsive. Sometimes they do it out of fear or whatever, not a conscious way of going, you know what? I can live with this. Or maybe it'll make more sense as time goes on. Maybe, that opinion I got from my best friend isn't exactly that bad or that good or, whichever way it's going to go. But there's plenty of times where I've walked into that room with a homeowner that just bought a house and the best friend there's 3 or 4 best friends in there. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then all of a sudden the person is just making all these not reckless decisions, but decisions that might cost them money. So normally as a realtor, I try to stay calm and neutral. I'm always just trying to meet them halfway, or at least find a way for them to find the balance. So that way they can hopefully make that decision calmly, thoughtfully, mindfully. You know, that's important to me.
That is very important.
At least to me.
No, it should be to everybody. But you also brought up the example of like what happens when you have 5 houses and 3 haven't been rented out.
And that is a big example to me because I've seen it happen. And again, that's where your emotions come back into check and the choices that you made. Because before you know those houses are vacant, sometimes there's a reason for it, right? Maybe you as the landlord didn't take care of something, or maybe there's a job relocation situation, or maybe there's a sudden accident, or there may be a health issue or a crisis that maybe that person had to go. But the thing is that if you can provide the right conditions, right, in those homes, hopefully they won't leave. But if they do, and you have to sit with that, with paying all the bills, keeping it all up, hopefully you've done all the right choices or kept consistent with your plan, whatever that financial plan. A lot of my friends nowadays are trying to create 5-year plans. If they know, then they know how to expect that possibility of dealing with maybe not having rent for 10% of the year or 8%, because the vacancy situation for your properties that hopefully you have is less than 8%. That's what most of the investors I work with say. We want it to be at least less than 8% of the time.
For the year.
For the year.
Understood. And then you kind of have to take into consideration making sure your property stays marketable.
Correct.
So that includes upgrades and
staying with the trend. I mean, because it does. It moves up and down, and sometimes sideways, depending on the location of the area for that complex or duplex or whatever it is that you've now purchased.
What is the sideways movement?
Sideways could be that. To me, sideways basically means that, you know what? Nothing in the economic area of that building has changed. So sideways to me could either mean that nothing's, moving up and down, or sideways could, for me, mainly means that, you know what, we expected it to go one way and all of a sudden the guy next door tore down the building. Now all my tenants are dealing with the construction noise.
Yes.
And no one wants to live here. So now my plan of income has gone, to me, sideways.
Understood. Okay. That's very good. I like that. Alrighty. So if people want to reach out to you for help with their home buying process, how can they reach you?
Oh, goodness. They can first reach me by cell phone or by text, either way, or by Instagram or Twitter. Okay. I definitely can be reached on social media platforms.
What's your IG?
Oh, goodness. It is Hot House, spelled HAUTE, house.LA. Okay. And that's on Instagram. You can find me there and all my new properties that are coming up and around. And then on Twitter at Billie Jean. BILLIEJEAN and the number 9. Okay. So like Cloud 9.
Cloud 9.
Yeah, on Twitter.
What are some hot properties right now? Like, what are some hot popping areas right now in LA? Or the areas that you're working on?
You know what? What's interesting for me is that I've been finding myself over in San Bernardino County.
Really? Yeah. I saw you post one in Rancho Cucamonga.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Believe it or not, their schools are like top 10.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so a lot of, actually my international market have bought out there. And they bought, for them last year, and they're getting a really great return. They're taking advantage back out into the market by selling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what was once they bought for 2 years ago, in some cases for $85,000, we're putting it on the market for $220,000.
Oh, wow.
And that's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Rancho Cucamonga.
Wow.
In a condo. It was shocking to me. Yeah. I didn't realize some of my clients had been doing this without letting me know, but at least they got me selling them now. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that, but I was really surprised.
You didn't know that was the plan?
No, I didn't know the plan. And, it's hard to keep up with everyone's plan. I'm just thankful everyone has the plan.
A plan, yeah.
That makes
and
me
maybe
happy.
They didn't even know that was a plan. They just saw the
market go up. And they're like, hey, you know what? Let's take advantage of this market. Yeah. And that's an awesome thing for those who bought during during these times where, and especially like Rancho Cucamonga or Fontana or Upland, where they saw a lot more foreclosure. These are Riverside and San Bernardino counties. So when you had mentioned before, like what areas, you know, parts of LA, it's a little bit harder to decipher, you know, because there's still so many great places that are hidden, but still you have to pay over $500,000 for that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
Yeah,
easy.
So it's good to be open and flexible for those areas that are probably considered further out
and up and coming. You know what I mean? So a lot of people also bought, let's say, like in Las Vegas, they bought those condos out there, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, for $40,000 a piece. They're now taking advantage of the market 8 years later.
Okay.
And
so how do those people decide if they're going to either rent the property out or sell it for profit?
I guess it depends if you're a married couple or if you're the one person, the one investor, or if you're in a group, then you have to consult the people in your group, right? So it's just on a case by case. It has to be. I mean, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't try to like individualize it to each person.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on The Scoop. Thanks for all that good info. So you guys followed Billie Jean. She has
yes, please follow me.
Yeah, and you have your personal IG too.
I do, and that's at so you can always find me there as well at Billie Jean. E9. It's the same as my Twitter account.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And you post properties on there as well.
I do. Now you can see what I'm doing on weekends as well. At that point,
I feel like you're always working though. Everything's always very work related.
But you know what? Thankfully, and that's the freedom that real estate does give a person. You know, that financial freedom, hopefully that flexibility, and to meet great people like you at the same time. Yeah. Goodness.
All right, so we're gonna get into scoop news.
Yay.
There's some juicy things going on. We have a couple good stories that are happening.
Juicy stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so I know you've probably heard about Roseanne being canceled. Have you?
So fast?
Yeah, you didn't know this?
Oh my goodness.
The reboot of, for those of you that don't know, the reboot of the 90s show Roseanne has been canceled. And this is because of Roseanne's tweet about the former President Obama, his aide, Valerie Jarrett. She basically called her, or the tweet said Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes, and she referred to Valerie Jarrett. And Valerie Jarrett is an African-American woman. This didn't sit too well with ABC, so they pulled the plug on the show and issued a statement saying that Roseanne's Twitter statement was abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values, and we have canceled her show.
Wow.
This is the quickest I've ever seen a show canceled.
Me too. I thought it was still going.
Right. So the Roseanne reboot actually premiered back in March, and it estimated to have brought in approximately 18 million viewers.
Wow.
On the premiere. But after those numbers came in, it actually was renewed just 2 days after the debut for a season 2. But that's canceled now because of what Roseanne did. So reportedly, she is in a very dark place right now. And she's very sad because not only did she lose her job, but everybody else, the crew and the other actors on the show.
Yeah, I was looking forward to her show.
Yeah.
She was a riot.
Yeah. Well, that's that. You kind of got to be careful what you say. So, and then Kim Kardashian actually visited the White House today with her attorney, Sean Holley. And they met with... You said what?
They let her in.
They let her in. She actually had on an all-black suit, as you can see there.
Oh, wow.
But she had on some lime green stiletto heels, too, which you can't see because she's standing behind the desk. But so basically, this is the reason why she went. She met with Donald Trump in an attempt to have Alice Marie Johnson's life sentence dismissed. A lot of people don't know about her story, but she's a great-grandmother, and she was convicted for drug conspiracy and money laundering back in 1997. Wow. But she was sentenced to a life sentence, which seems very harsh for that crime. Not saying that it was right, but this was her first offense, and she's serving the same time frame as the Unabomber. So it's kind of like the two don't match up quite well. So Kim actually is using her platform in a positive way, and she went to go meet with Donald Trump to hopefully have Mrs. Johnson's sentence clemenced, and hopefully she'll be released. So, and ironically enough, it was her birthday today, Mrs. Johnson. The lady that's actually imprisoned at this point. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what good came from the.
Well, yeah, she's got Kardashian advocate.
I know.
That's kind of a nice thing.
Well, I think it is nice. I think that she's using in this case, using her platform for something very positive. So hopefully we'll see something good come from it, especially since Kanye, her husband, got so much negative press the past few weeks.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But I also wanted to share with everyone the social media buzz. Did I send you that link, Felicia, for social media buzz? You with the guy climbing okay, good. I wanted to make sure. So I don't know if you guys saw this video, but it's trending right now on social media, and I had to share it on our social media buzz. It's a man that's in France. He was not a citizen of France, but he saw a 4-year-old boy hanging from a hotel balcony, hanging on for dear life. So he climbed, let's see, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4 stories up to save the baby. As you can see, the baby's parents can't quite get him off of the balcony somehow, some way, but this young man climbed all the way up and was able to save the baby's life.
Goodness.
Now, because of this, the French president granted him citizenship, and he wants to be a firefighter, so they made him a firefighter. They gave him a position as a firefighter. So
wow,
his good deed paid off for him.
I like seeing that. He's like a hero.
Yeah, this happened on Memorial Day, or the day before Memorial Day, but he met with the president on Memorial Day in France, obviously. But yeah, so that's pretty much, that's our show for tonight. I do want to thank you, Miss Billie Jean Ford, for coming on and joining us and sharing all this really good information. I feel like we were saying during the break earlier, that this is not something that is discussed. You know, this is not common knowledge. People don't understand it. People don't always know it. And not everyone has the time to do the Google research or any kind of research to learn about the real estate market and what they need to do to prepare themselves for home ownership. So I do thank you for coming on and
my
sharing
pleasure.
Your knowledge. Anything else you want to add before we close out tonight?
Goodness, all I can say is that, you know, real estate is definitely one of the ways to get that freedom that would just make you hopefully more fulfilled in your life. Mm-hmm. And for me, you know, eventually, actually, I would love to go into boutique hotels. Just like we were talking about the Monopoly game, that's my next sort of outlook.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the millennials, as we talked about, they're more mobile in their jobs. And as we all have been trying to collect the knowledge to get passive income, the next part of the board game comes up.
For you is boutique
for me, and
hotel.
I hope, it's
to purchase or to sell, or both.
I think flipping is my
that's your passion.
I think that's
is that where you are on the Monopoly board?
I am almost there, and I'm really excited. I've got some really great partnerships created right now, and we're just developing them as we go, because to build wealth takes time.
Yes,
it takes time. It takes hours, as we talked about, and I don't want anyone ever to give up. I think that don't feel like, especially for millennials who want to make that impact or try to save the world, if you will, it's like, just don't give up on whatever that dream is, and don't chase that dollar. Just get there. You know, don't worry about it. It'll come. It will definitely come to you. And real estate is definitely one of the vehicles. It may not be for that person, but we can all help if you get the right partners.
Do you feel like, and I know we're going to close out soon, but I do want to ask you this, because what you just said piqued this question, but do you feel like ownership or home ownership or investments or any kind of real estate purchase, do you feel like it's for everyone? Do you think everyone should have a piece of the pie? Or do you think that some people just shouldn't touch that?
It'd just be idiotic.
Yeah.
No, I think in everyone's lifetime, it wouldn't be a bad experience. I think they should try it if they want to, if they have that necessity, but it may not be for everybody, and they may not feel that pull or that need. It isn't for everybody, depending on which level they want to play at, right? Do they just want to own one condo? They want to own 4 houses? Or do they want to get to that other side of the monopoly board and start going towards hotel owning? Or other businesses. It doesn't have to be hotels.
So most people that go into more of the commercial side, do they typically own a certain amount of well, I don't know what kind of property you would call it.
Any kind of property.
Residential property.
Yeah, residential or even commercial. They've already had the experience and they're looking to, diversify.
How long does it take before someone feels comfortable? I'm sure it's case by case, but just on average, before someone feels comfortable enough in the real estate game before they transition over to commercial?
Oh, goodness. In my opinion, I think that there was an author that talked about putting in 10,000 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell, I think his name is. The Tipping Point, right? Is the Tipping Point? I think that's the name of the book. But anyhow, 10,000 hours. Whatever it may be.
However long it is
for you want to put that time in.
Yeah.
I think once you get to that point, you'll find yourself feeling comfortable to get to that other side of the monopoly board and going into whatever, whether it's a business or a hotel, whatever it is, to make you even more passive income. But you got to be patient and you got to be okay to take a few hits. You got to just get to that place.
So L's come with it.
Yeah.
L's come with the win.
Just a little bit. And also, surround yourself with the right people. Surround yourself well. Those lawyers, those accountants, those people that have 20 years under their belt that maybe you don't have, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of their knowledge, and don't let your ego stand in your way of making those great decisions that could get you to a greater place.
Right. I love that. Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right. Well, you guys can find me on Instagram at Ms. Ashley Marie. And you can follow The Scoop on Instagram at The Scoop On Air. We're also on Facebook under the same handle, The Scoop On Air. We will be, actually, you can email as well if you have any questions or if you have show ideas at thescooponair@gmail.com. I do check the email regularly, so feel free to hit me up there. Other than that, I do want to thank you guys all for tuning in. And until next time, ciao.